Okay, we had a fail on the first video where I actually put the bead of ink down, but I'll kind of pick it up here. I'm actually have just printed a test sheet, which you can see here, and I used poor quality copy paper as a test, and you can kind of see I've got a glossy dimensional quality. That means the ink has come through plenty fine. It will flatten out as it dries over 2 to 3 hours. My edges are fairly good, clean. And how did I actually make that print? Well, what I did, I'll kind of lift my screen here. By the way, I have my, be careful of that too, your squeegee will want to drop off. What I do with that is I have my bar, my kickstand there, and I'll have like a roll of tape off to the side where I can just set my squeegee like that. I'm going to see that. And I also really should put some newsprint down underneath this whole setup. That would be a good idea just to keep ink off the area. I'm pretty clean when I print, but still. Okay, so I've got my screen set up, and I have a bead of ink, which I poured out of this container. I actually didn't use the jar. I'm going to actually now, let's see, I've got my paper there. I've got a few marks where it was sitting on the paper, but let's just go ahead and use this as a test print. Use a cheap piece of paper for your first print. I recommend that. I'm going to put, and that way you can see if there's any problems. I'm going to lay just a bit more ink down here. My bead is at the top of, or rather the bottom of my screen here, because I've already run one print. It took one pass to give me that nice clean print. So here's what I recommend. This is the part I had on the other video which didn't take. This is called flooding your screen. I lift the screen. I do a pass like that. Basically a pull is what it's called. And then I pull back. Now normally I would actually start at the top and I'd be back at the top. Because I'm at the bottom again, I'll just do my first actual pull to create a print. Used a bit more pressure that time, because my screen was sitting there drying for a while, and actually look at that, I got a really nice print out of that. Okay, so move the squeegee aside while I kind of show you this. So I've got a print in position, taped so that it didn't pull up with the screen. I did use a little too much pressure, now I can see that. If you look here, just kind of rotate that off. Give you a nice close view. There's a little bit of a rough edge on especially that center vein. You can see it a little bit here. That happens because the ink is literally getting pushed underneath because I use too much pressure. So, feeling the pressure. So I actually will try another run here, another print. And that's why I shouldn't set my ink on my tape. Got a little bit of black on my tape. Always got towels nearby. A couple of rags. Okay, so let's actually tape this down. This time, yeah, we'll do side to side because I can reach. And again, I have my registration marks set up, but I'm not using them right now. I just want to demo the actual print run, just setting up your ink and getting it running. So now my ink is at the top, where it should be. And at this point, what I would do, if this was my first print, cheap piece of copy paper, what I would do is that I'd actually do that flood back towards me and then back, bringing the bead to the top again. I can do that again though. During the print run, you may find that your screen starts to plug up. If you look here, you can see the openings where the frisket is open. They actually kind of show a little bit of unevenness. That'll increase as I do the run, and especially if I keep talking and let my screen dry. So what I'm going to do is drop my screen down and grab my squeegee. Put your squeegee behind the ink and then pull in the direction that the ink is going to go. a little less pressure. I'm actually going to do 2 pulls to bring the ink back. Less pressure the second time because I think I got it on the first pull. Leave my squeegee in position. Lift. And see what I got. And indeed, yeah, that did make a little bit of a difference. Got a little bit of texture on some of my edges. You can see, show it to you here. On the stem, or rather the vein in the middle of the leaf, you see my paper probably moved slightly. So that's why you have to be careful. That's actually a halfway decent print. Compared to the first one, not quite as good as the first one. If you look here, I've got a little bit of, put my finger in it, that's great. I've got a little bit of bleeding off the edge. That means too much pressure. And like I was saying, have a place to set your prints to dry. This blue tape is wonderful. It'll hang on to these prints and keep them on a wall, for example. So I'm actually going to position mine like that. I have a room for a few prints here. And I'll kind of show you what I'm doing. Got them taped back here. This keeps them out of the way so they don't contact each other. I'm going to say those prints, oops, and of course you don't want to do that. That's what demos are for, to show you all the mistakes. I touched it and smeared it. Fortunately, I'm not using them. Let's let those dry for 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to continue. Just run another piece of paper in here. I actually want to see this break down a little bit to show you what that might look like. So I'm not going to flood the screen, and I'm going to do one pass and see what I get. Remember, flooding the screen is just getting all the threads filled with ink. Right now, I'm seeing it's starting to plug up. Now, I actually want to see what happens to kind of show you problems that might emerge in the middle of your print run. Remember, we're doing 10, let's say 10 to 12 to be safe. There's the angle, about 40 degrees, not much pressure. I slowed down, and I'm going to leave my squeegee at this end and my ink up here, and I'm going to lift. And sure enough, 2 pulls was too many on those other 2. I did 1 pull, and it was actually a better result. Well, that tells me, what does it tell me? It tells me that the ink is got the right viscosity. It's fresh ink. Ink that's sat around for a while may congeal and slowly thicken, and that's where you start having problems. So if you look at this print, especially this one right here, very clean. Got a little bit of edginess on that one. That's an excellent print. Like I say, you will run out of space. I recommend figure out enough space for 10 to 12 prints. Set them on the floor where a cat dog won't get after them, or preferably an open wall. Tape them on that. I'm going to do one more print. Okay. And I'll bring this screen down. There's tape at the near end this time. Okay, so at this point, I know that I'm getting low on ink. If you can see that, I have really less than half the ink I had when I started. I've done 1, 2, 3, 4 prints. Let's give it a try. And actually, most of my ink was done at this end, so I'm going to do a second pull and bring all the ink back to the top of my screen and see what I got. So, rules to follow. Don't use a lot of pressure. Move fairly slowly. You saw the speed at which I did that pull. Actually, that's a pretty decent print. So, I can get away with a good print with 2 passes or 1 pass. If I use less pressure, that print will actually come out fairly good. Got a little bit of speckling right on the edge where my ink, looks like my ink bled over just a bit, but these are pretty decent prints. If this is the quality you want to strive for, or even a little cleaner. And that does it for our basic print run, just to give you a sense of how to handle the squeegee, how to set that bead of ink on your screen, how to flood the screen.